I think as a songwriter over the past few years, I've just gotten more inspired to write like more vulnerable music. If anything, it's like the more music I release, the more I see that like the vulnerable songs are the ones that actually connect with people.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Thank you for taking the time.
100%. Well, I'm Adam. It's so nice to meet you.
So
And
nice to meet you, Adam.
and this is about you and your journey in music. And obviously, we'll talk about the EP that you just put out, which is great. I've been listening to it the last couple days. So,
Thank you.
yeah, really excited to chat with you. So I always kind of start off with like your origin story a bit here. You're born in what, Calgary? Is that what I saw?
Yeah.
Okay. Born and raised there, and you moved to Nashville, right? Or are you in Nashville or no?
Yeah, I've been living in Nashville the past 15 years. So I remember the day I got here, I literally knew nobody. I had like one person's name on a piece of paper and was like, "Well, I guess it's a good time to figure this place out." And yeah, now I've been living here 15 years. It's crazy how fast time flies, you know?
Wow. I recently moved to Nashville like 4 years ago. Like like
Oh
at
my gosh,
the pandemic. Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it here. It's like the best decision I ever made.
It is a really amazing city. I think the people here are just so friendly. I think it's the Southern hospitality thing or something.
100%.
But
Yeah.
the minute I came here, I felt like I was home, and yeah, I travel a lot to different
Mhm.
cities,
Sure.
but it just feels like Nashville should be my home base for that reason.
That's amazing. Yeah, I moved from San Diego. And we
Oh my
came.
gosh, San Diego's like heaven on earth.
It's beautiful. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love it, but I moved here and I'm like, I'll take this any day. Like I enjoy going
All
back. My
right.
sister and my parents still live there, but like
Yeah,
this is the spot for me. I mean, I didn't
yeah,
know what I was doing getting into this or anything like moving here, and it was like you said, it was just like I'm home now. This is great.
totally,
You
totally.
drive by people and they'd wave to you, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, is something going on? Like, what did I do? And it's just so different than like San Diego. If you wave to someone, they'll like give you the fingers.
That's so true. That's so true. It is definitely a different vibe than California in that way.
Yeah. Well, tell me about growing up in Calgary. What was that like? Cold?
Calgary was cold, most of the year, like 10 months of the year, it was pretty cold. Yeah, it's beautiful up there. It's like the Rocky Mountains. It's, like Colorado times 3 in a way. The
Yeah.
mountains are just like taller and rockier and more majestic some way. And I think you take things for granted when you grow up with them around you
Mhm.
because you just like that's the only reality you ever know. And we knew hiking and camping and spending time in the mountains like it was like second nature, and
Yeah.
then you move away from them and you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty special, that was pretty rad. So I love Calgary. My family's still back there obviously, and it's a pretty big music town. I think it was really easy for me to just naturally fall into playing shows when I was 10 years old, and I just
Wow.
started like
Yeah.
playing shows around the city just because there was always something going on. And so I'm really grateful that it is like such a music mecca in itself.
Yeah. And that's cool that you grew up around like, beauty and nature like that. Like for me, San Diego has the beach, which is nice and everything, but it's like mostly concrete. And then I came here and it's just like greenery and seasons. And my mind was blown. I'm like, what is this? This is like so crazy. But you
It
kind
is
of
a
have it
different.
already.
Yeah,
A
I definitely had greenery in seasons, but it's just different. Like we don't really like winter that much, and
bit.
snow, and like a Canadian winter, specifically like a Calgary winter, is very special in itself. Like I was used to -40,
That's so wild.
sometimes colder than that temperatures. And so I'm just like, I don't want to live in this anymore. Like
No, that's, like,
shoveling, not my
dangerous.
favorite thing to do. And so I'm happy that Nashville doesn't get that brutal.
No. Get, like, 1 week of snow if we're
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, where the
Um,
whole city shuts down.
right. So how do you get into music? I was reading a little bit about you. You started what piano at an early age, but you also had like guitars around the house because your dad is a guitar player.
Yeah, both my parents played instruments. Yeah, my mom got my brother and I started playing piano when we were 6 years old, and then my dad sort of put my first guitar in my hands when I was 8, and I just felt like it was a lot cooler of a thing to do, you know? I wanted to play Shania Twain songs instead of, like, classical concerto number whatever,
Sure.
and so the first thing he showed me on guitar was the Intro to Stairway to Heaven, and I was like I was off. I just didn't look back
Wow.
from there.
And was your dad doing it like professional or was it just a fun hobby for him?
Yeah, he was in a band, in college and then became an engineer and still has a band back home that they play, locally around town.
That's
But,
cool.
I'm the first one in my family to be crazy enough to do this professionally.
That's amazing. Did you ever go see him play like when you were younger or was he done with the band at that point?
Oh my gosh, yeah, we would go see him play. He was sort of done with the band at that point, and then as I got older, he would play in, our church a lot, and so
Okay.
I would play with him. That's kind of how I got started playing on stages, and then he sort of, like, rounded up a band again, and then so I would go see them. Sometimes I would sit in with them. Then I started my own band, and so it was just, like, music was always a big part of my childhood.
That's awesome. With your own music and in writing your own songs, when did you start to try to do that or when did you start doing that?
I mean, I started writing songs when I was 10 as well. Like, I think
Wow.
I just really took to everything music like a magnet. And there was something about writing my own songs, being able to craft my own message, that was just so cool to me, so special, and
Mhm.
be like, oh wow, I could stand in front of an audience and actually like play songs that is stuff I want to talk about. And I'm like, this is a pretty good way to go right here.
Mhm.
And even growing up, playing in front of my church audience back then, it was like the most forgiving audience you could ever ask for. You could pretty much do anything and people would
Yeah.
give you rave reviews. And so it was a very like easy way for me to stumble around the stage and actually learn how to perform. And
Mhm.
now, having done that over 2 decades, like I love the stage. It's the place that's probably the most home to me in the
Mhm.
entire world.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've had other artists, a lot of other artists on that kind of started in the church, and it's like you have a built-in audience, right? I mean, and you could play
Yeah.
multiple, and sometimes you play 1, 2, 3 times a week, and you're just getting all of this, experience and repetition doing that. I'm sure that's so helpful.
Yeah, it's such amazing practice, and it would always baffle my mind when I came to, cities like LA or Nashville, and I would meet people who've like never played a show before, and it was like, "What? You've never played a show? Like, isn't this how you learn how to do
Right.
it all?" And so,
Like,
and
"No, TikTok, man."
yeah, yeah, I guess there's just different journeys. There's different methods for everybody, but yeah, for me, I definitely learned playing 2 or 3 times a week, and what do you do when an amp explodes, or what do you do when a cable dies in the middle of your song? Like, how do you
Yeah. Break a
react to
string or
that?
something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was a very, like, easy, in the foam pit kind of way of learning how to walk on the balance beam.
That's amazing, and then it's cool that I mean, to have the courage to go up and sing your own songs too. I mean, a lot of people struggle with that, where it's like, I don't mind maybe even getting the courage to get up on the stage and then maybe doing a cover song. Like, oh, I know this is a hit. Where it's like if you get up there and you're playing your own songs, it could go, 2 ways.
Yeah, I think that, from a very early age, when I was 15, I bought a band van, like a 15 passenger band van that
Oh
I
my
would like
god, you're in at 15.
drive across the country. I only could afford one vehicle. I mean, my parents weren't really well off, and so I was kind of supporting myself at that time, at least with my career. And so I got a band van, and I was like, we were gigging, and we would just drive to all of our shows. I would also drive that to high school. I was definitely the coolest girl at school, and yeah, I think also learned how to perform by being a cover band for a while. I think that's how everybody starts because nobody wants to listen to 60 minutes or 4 hours of your own original songs. And so
Right.
so you sprinkle them in. And I also think that, learning cover songs is a really great way to learn the craft as well. You get to learn how the greats did it and what they did with melodies and what they did with chord changes. And I mean, now circle it around 2 decades later, like I'm playing guitar for Shania
I
this
know, I was
year.
gonna say that. I was
And
like, you were
not to
talking
hop
about
ahead,
loving her, and then now you're in her band. It's like,
it is
what?
like a very weird parallel. I never saw sidemanning being something that I would do in my career ever. But when she called me at the beginning of this year, I couldn't say no. I mean, she's the queen herself. And it's been very wild, like learning these songs. Obviously, I know all these songs and I could sing the guitar solos to you, but learning them to the point where you can play them perfectly on stage is just a different level. And so learning all of like the chord changes and the transitions, and Mutt Lang was just so obviously instrumental in a lot of those records, and really learning like the bones of how those songs fit together, and how the chorus feels so big and how the section after the chorus feels like a sing along. It is truly like a science, and it
Mhm.
has been like so enjoyable. I remember at the beginning of this year being like, whoa, what, that happened, he played that chord here, she moves this there, like I was just going through my own little existential crisis of like, this is such a crash course on how to write hit songs.
That's
And
awesome,
so
and
I think
yeah.
cover songs are really important.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I was curious, like, if knowing her songs and, if you covered them as a kid and stuff, like, when you actually have her call and say excuse me, my throat's
Yeah,
all messed up.
you're
Um,
fine.
I was gonna say, like, having her call, okay, you might think, "Oh, I know how to play that song," and then did you get there at all and we're like, "Oh, actually, like, this is a little bit different than I was hearing in my head," but maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, all the songs seem to like really fall into place, like on the neck or whatever, in a way I kind of expected. But I will say, like some of the chicken picking solos. So on Shania's record, she really had two big guitar players, Dan Huff and Brent Mason.
Mhm.
And Dan Huff, I did my last record with, and so I know him really well. He played like he's such an incredible guitar player, and he plays like in more of a bluesy 80s style. And so that is like my wheelhouse. So all of those solos, I'm like, I got this.
Okay.
But the Brent Mason solos are like the chicken picking, like really, really country solos. And that is not my wheelhouse. That is not like any of my guitar heroes or influences. And so it took me a long time to like learn those solos and get them right. But it was just so fun because it's something that I never do in my own show before. So now some of those songs are my favorite to play live because I've like really worked to get them perfect. And now it's just fun. It's like
Yeah. A
riding a
different, yeah,
slide or
muscle.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly, that's awesome. To go
Yeah.
back a little bit, like, with your you said you bought this 15 passenger van, and you're touring around, what, Canada with a band that you had put together with high school friends, or
Yeah. Gosh, I remember like my very, very first band. It was through like word of mouth, some friends. Like originally, I started from like the youth group in my church, and then I just sort of gathered like a few friends, and there was this like really, really cool female bass player, and I was like, "That's my bass player," um, and so it was amazing. I remember those touring days as like so fun and so hard. Like we would drive 8 hours to play a show that night, and then would drive like after the gig would drive like another 4 hours because touring Canada is not close together. It
right, it's
is not like
massive, yeah.
touring the States. Um, and so yeah, just a lot of driving. I remember like a lot of winter roads where like the windshield wiper on the windshield wiper on 15 passenger vans are always terrible. Like they always suck so bad. And in the middle of like a blizzard in the winter, you're just like praying, like looking through like a little hole in your windshield and driving. And so when I think of those touring days, I'm just like, wow, that was a lot of effort.
Yeah, I mean, talk about knowing that you wanted to do that. I mean, going a lot of people would be like, "Well, I'm done with this. Like, this is not
Yeah,
my thing." What was
yeah,
your
but
sorry, go ahead.
there was just nothing like that feeling of being on stage and being like accepting people's love from the audience and again, like playing a few of my own songs and being like, "Whoa, I can actually do this one day with like all of my own material. This
Mhm.
is awesome."
What was like, an early or maybe you're still in high school, like, was there like a moment of like a validating moment or something that kind of pushed your career forward in a way where you were like, "Oh, wow, like, I know I'm on the right track." I mean, obviously being able to tour and booking those gigs would be huge, but was there like, did somebody reach out to you? Did you put a song up that did really well, or did anything like that happen early on for you?
Yeah, it's funny because as I was growing up, a lot of people, were signing deals um, and releasing songs to radio. But I knew that I always wanted to like move to the U.S. and
Oh, interesting.
kind of release music here and Canada at the same time. And so I never really released anything when I was really young. I made a lot of records. I made like terrible tiny indie projects, which is just part of the learning. Yeah, if there was a moment, it would probably be either one of two moments. Like I started working with Randy Bachman when I was really little, and so from Bachman Turner Overdrive, American Woman, Taking Care of Business, all those
Yeah.
classic rock songs. And Randy was just such a legend in his own right of how to write a song. And I really got to learn from one of the greats of that craft of like what goes into a song, what makes a hit song. And so I'm so grateful to Randy for that. Uh
Did you
and I
meet
just
like,
remember
see you at a show or something? Like, how did you meet him?
I met him through a songwriting buddy of mine had given him my demo tape, and it
Wow.
had like Jan Arden cover songs and Tommy Emmanuel like guitar instrumentals that I'd covered, and then a few songs that I wrote. And he got it, and he was like, "This sounds like a young female Chet Atkins. I need to meet this girl." And so I started. We got together for a couple of writing sessions. I remember the first time he came to our house. And my parents were like massive Guess Who and BTO fans. And so my
Just
mom
like,
was
"Oh
like
my gosh."
so nervous. And he pulled up to our house in a stretch limo. And we're like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" And she's like running around making sure the house is clean. And then he walks in and he's like the chillest dude ever. He puts his feet up on the coffee table and he's like, "Let's write a song." And from that point forward, Randy was just, he became like another dad to me, honestly, growing up. My dad would take me out to his studio, like out on the West Coast, like on Salt Spring Island, just outside of Vancouver.
Mhm.
And there, like in the summers, I would go there every summer and just learn how to record and how to write songs. And he was the first one who introduced me to like Gibson guitar. He really helped me put together like my first indie album when I was 16. And they offered me a record deal back then. And then basically at the same time, they were like, "Here's your record deal, but don't sign it because you should move to the US and get a record deal there." And so here I'm 16 years old
Wow.
being offered a record deal, being like, "I'm about to become a rock star right now and I'm going to turn this away. Like, what?"
Yeah, this doesn't make
But the
sense.
head of the label was like offering it to me and at the same time being like, "Don't do this." And I'm like, I am so confused. But I'm so grateful that he did that because shortly after that, I went to LA for 6 months. Then I came to Nashville. And now a decade and a half later, my life has never been the same. And so, yeah, I really think working with Randy in those first early stages was such a pivotal moment of me, um, really, meeting some of the first few people that got things going.
Mhm.
I think he like was the one who kind of discovered me when I was so young.
That's amazing. And did you move to Nashville, like, right when you were finished with, what, high school? Or did? Because I think you went to Berkeley, right?
So I graduated high school a year early. I went to the school where you like taught yourself. It wasn't homeschool, but you still went to school, but you like taught yourself. And I was so eager to get out of school that I graduated a year early. And then
That's
I went
awesome.
right into university.
University.
I took business school and I was in because my parents were like very academic and they were like, you need to get some post-secondary education. And so
Yeah.
um I was in my second year of business school sitting in my accounting class, and I remember the day where I was like, "This is miserable. I am miserable right now. Like, I can always come back and learn accounting, but I can't always do music, and I need to go do it." And so that conversation of me sitting my parents down being like, "All right, mom and dad, I need to drop out of school and go do music." Um, they weren't the happiest about that, but they did support me a lot with music and they did understand like my passion for it. And that's why I started taking Berkeley online because my mom was like, okay,
Okay.
if you leave if you leave business school at U of C, then you need to definitely have something. You need to have some sort of piece of paper. And so I was gigging so much around then that that it just kind of worked to do Berkeley online.
Online. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then but you moved to Nashville, like, after you made that decision, I'm done with this accounting class, I wanna get out of here." And that's when you decided to make the move to Nashville?
Yeah, I a few of my friends back in Calgary knew some writers in LA. So I actually went down to LA for about 6 months. Um, I was working with CJ Vanston. He's the keyboard player for Spinal Tap, like their
Oh,
band.
wow, that's
They have a
awesome.
band that like tours around the world. And so
Yeah.
and they're so, so talented. And so CJ really took me under his wing at that time and kind of introduced me to a bunch of writers in the LA scene. And LA is like so such an amazingly creative city, and at the same point, it's so big that unless you find your pockets, you can kinda get lost in it, and
Mhm.
I think I was just I mean, now I write a lot in LA, actually mostly in LA, but back then, I think I was just so overwhelmed by it all, and somebody's like, "I think you should really go to Nashville. I think you should write there. I think you'd really like it," and so, yeah, they gave me one person's name on a piece of paper, and I remember coming to this city and being like, all right, I guess I'm just going to figure this out. And I was still Canadian and I didn't have a visa. And so I couldn't make any money down here. So I couldn't move and just get a job waiting tables because that was illegal. And so
Yeah.
I would come to Nashville for 2 weeks and I would, um, like from that first person's name, I had that writing session and I'm like, "Do you have any friends that would write with me? Do you have any friends that will you write with me again?" And so I would book triples, what we call them in town. So I would write a song from like 10 till 2, 3 till 6, 7 till 10, and then I'd go to a writer's round at night
Oh my
and see these like amazing hit songwriters write all of these songs. And then I'd go up to them afterwards and be like, "Will you write a song with me? Hi, my name's Lindsay." And and I was just, like, so hungry back then. I mean, would I
Yeah,
write a triple
hustling.
now? Hell no. I mean, but I was just, like, so, ready to, like, meet people and move, and I knew I couldn't get a visa until I sort of found a team down here and found a sponsor and then could actually get
Mhm.
a work permit. So yeah, I would write like crazy, and I'd do that for 2 weeks, and then I'd fly back to Calgary, and I was, like, waiting tables, I was playing shows, I was doing Berkeley online, and I would do that for another 2 weeks or so to make enough money to buy a plane ticket to come back down to Nashville, and I went back and forth between Calgary and Nashville for about a year and a half, just every 2
Wow.
weeks, and then eventually after that time, I finally had met enough writers where, I met this production company and they introduced me to, you know, my first publishing company that gave me a pub deal that were able to sponsor me and get my visa and ultimately offered me a record deal at the same time. And so after those first like that first year and a half of going back and forth, then things just kind of like sprung into gear. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going on my first worldwide tour. I'm releasing things to radio. This is wild. Um, And so, yeah, it was a good lesson of, like, hard work does pay off.
Yeah, and then once you get the deal and then you're able to get the visa and all that stuff, that's when you put out that first album, right? The project, was that
Yeah.
around that time? And you had a hit on the
Yeah.
radio right away. I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, gosh, yeah, I'd like to say right away. I mean, we released, like, a few singles. I think my album didn't come for, like, another 4 years after that, 4 or 5 years. Good things take time, and
Sure.
and oftentimes, I mean, the music industry has changed even so much in the past few years, but back then it was like, okay, let's get a few singles going. I mean, still, I guess this is kind of the philosophy now. Let's get a few singles going and then we'll drop an actual project.
Mhm.
And we just sort of got caught in that for a while. And so yeah, it took me 5 years to release my first record, but when I did, it did feel like, oh my gosh, I actually have like my first major label release out in the world. And yeah, that was back in 2017, and that record did pretty well for itself.
Mhm. That's really awesome. Well, I wanna I'm curious to hear about this new album. I know you've had a lot of success in between there, obviously, with everything you've done and the touring you've done, and you're on America's or Canada's Got Talent and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, how cool. I mean, that's amazing, and you've just looking at the awards you've won and been nominated for, like Juno Award and everything else. But, I'm curious about this new album because this is such a vulnerable record. Uh, I can you I mean, I feel like it's I don't know, would you say it's more vulnerable than most of your other stuff that you put out?
Yeah, I think as a songwriter over the past few years, I've just gotten more inspired to write like more vulnerable music. If anything, it's like the more music I release, the more I see that like the vulnerable songs are the ones that actually connect with people. I was sexually assaulted as a little girl, and I wrote a song about that on my last project. And when I released that song, it's called Make You. I
Mhm.
just remember getting thousands of DMs from fans being like, "Thank you for putting this song into the world. I really needed to hear this. Thank you for putting this message." But I now have the courage to go talk to a family member, go find therapy, or go get help. And it was just such an example of how powerful music is to me. And so going into this next project, this recent project, I was like, all right, well, I all I know as a songwriter is to like share my story and hope that it can inspire the people who come across it and listen to it. And I feel like the past couple years have been two of the most healing years in my life. And I really wanted to write about that. I really wanted to write about all the amazing things that I've learned and I've been through, and the difficult things that I've learned and I've been through. And in the hopes that like that song Make You, that it could really be heard by the people who need to hear that. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I got diagnosed with an eating disorder at the beginning of 23, and I never saw that coming, which is really part of the problem of it. But um, I really wanted to write about that process of getting to wake up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror and accept yourself for everything that you are, and like accept the little things that your heart gets excited about compared to like quieting them or numbing them or pushing them off. I think for so long. And I think for a lot of people, um, we can just get our sight so focused on one thing that we stop listening to that voice, as cheesy as it sounds. But I think like our intuition is so important and so powerful with how it can guide our decisions and guide ultimately our life's choices. And I think a few years ago, I just got to the point where I was very much so not in tune with that anymore. Um, and an eating disorder is a good example of how you can numb your feelings. You can numb your feelings
100%.
by a lot of different ways, like alcohol and drugs, and I mean, fill in the blank. There's like so many things
Yeah.
that you can numb out to. But I had just taken that to another level, and at that point, I had an eating disorder for 20 years. So it's something that just felt so natural to me that I didn't even realize it anymore. And, being in the industry, like the entertainment industry, especially as a woman, there's just so many pressures to show up as a certain way and
Mhm.
to look a certain way. And there's so many pressures of like, if you're skinny, you'll be more successful. And I even got like so many examples as I was young and coming up in the music industry of like, Lindsay, you need to lose weight before this next single drops.
Oh my
Or
gosh.
yeah, there was just so many examples of of why the entertainment industry is obviously a breeding ground for eating disorders. I mean,
Right.
you can like be on social media for 2 seconds and figure that out. Um
Right.
but because all of that, I just had like such this like firm structure built in my brain of like this is what normal is.
Mhm.
And yeah, January of last year, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this alone anymore. And so the past couple years have been two of the most healing years of my life because I've really just been taking a like honest look of everything that's been going on, of everything that I'm feeling. And I've heard a lot of even addicts who are going through recovery
Mhm.
say
I'm in
this, but like,
recovery. I was gonna say that this your story is so, just hearing you say, like, I can relate so much to it. So sorry to interrupt you, but go
oh
ahead.
no, thank you, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I've just heard like a lot of addicts or people in recovery say that the unraveling is actually more painful because you start feeling your feelings for the first time in, for
100%.
me, 20 years, really, like honest feelings, and it doesn't feel as good as numbing them out does. But um but it's so much healthier in the long run compared to the quick relief that is so temporary that like numbing all those things out would feel like. And so yeah, feeling feelings and feeling disappointments and feeling sadness and anger and all the things, and being able to like sit with it and being like, okay, I just need to feel it and let it pass.
This
Like,
sucks,
what?
but it'll
I'm like,
leave. Yeah.
therapist, is there like a 5-step process that it's like, not really.
Nope.
Um, and so yeah, I just decided to write all about it, and write about the things like when I wake up and sit quiet for a few minutes, like the things that my brain is telling me like pretty loudly. And it's like, not Lindsay, you can't not see this one. And so I've just been trying to answer those things. One of my favorite authors, her name's Martha Beck, and she's written all of these insane books, but one of my favorite ones is called The Way of Integrity. And she talks in that book about trying to make decisions that bring you closer to joy compared to decisions that bring you further away from joy. And it's been such an easy way for me to delineate in my own life of like, okay, does this bring me further away from joy or closer to joy? Does this further away from joy or closer to joy? And it's really helped me sort of navigate of like listening to, okay, what does Lindsay want
Mhm.
in this scenario? When for numbing so long that like I had no idea. I felt like Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride, I think, the movie where she like makes every kind of egg. She's like, I don't even know what kind of eggs are my favorite anymore. And I felt like that. I felt like I literally do not know what kind of eggs I like because I just have been living in such a numb state for so long.
No, 100%. I can relate so much to everything that you just said, and thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, it's like, in 12 I'm in 12-step recovery. I've been in it for 3 years,
Mm.
and, you do these steps and these things, and you think one thing is the problem, like, and it's not just like it wasn't the drinking and the drugging, it was like, "Oh, it's my own brain. That's the problem. How do we fix this?" And, like, one thing I remember hearing in a meeting one time was somebody was saying, like, when you're numbing your problems, you're just taking, like, if you're in a truck and you just took, like, every problem you have, you're just throwing it in the bed of the truck. And then when you get sober, or kind of realize that your life isn't manageable anymore, it's like you just slam the brakes on and then all that shit just starts flying forward. And then it's like, okay, well, I have to wait for all this. I have to get through all of this and then it's going to be good. But it's like going through all of it, which sucks so bad.
Dude, yes. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And yes, I love that analogy. I think that like if we suppress feelings or like squish them down into this bottle, like obviously they're not going
No.
away. They haven't like been pushed aside, never to be seen again. It's like,
Right.
yeah, they're just piling up in the back of that truck and
Yeah,
they're going to
waiting
come
for
out
you.
probably like much more forceful than they would have initially.
Right, yeah, it just all comes flying forward, and now you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god," and now I have to feel all of this stuff that I've, like, been, numbing out for forever, like, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Um,
Yeah, it is so crazy. And then it also is pretty humbling because the sadness or the anger feels pretty intense, but also I think that you can like feel joy in different
oh,
ways or
yeah.
like happiness in different ways than I really couldn't experience before. And so there's definitely the two ends of it, you know?
No, 100%, yeah, now it's like just, doing my program or whatever, like, you can
Yeah.
appreciate little things that I never would have cared about before.
Yeah.
You'd be outside like, "Oh, wow, these trees are really nice, like, this is cool." Like, it's just living life, like, maybe as most normal people do, but I'd never had that experience. It was just my brain was always telling me something wrong or negative all the time.
Yeah, I think it's so wild how I'm the epitome of a three. Here in Nashville, we all talk about this thing called the Enneagram. Have you
Oh,
heard
yes.
of
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah, yes, I have.
Okay, so
It's a
it's
test you
like a
take online?
personality test and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
given a
yeah.
number like 1 to 9.
Mhm.
Here in Nashville, I don't know if it's because we have like the national number system or something, and now
Yeah.
with personality tests, like we need numbers to talk about those things too. But sometimes when I go to LA, my LA friends are like, "What is that?" But it's big here, and I'm sort of the epitome of a 3, which is the achiever, and I just like
Mhm.
go, 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 and always want something on my plate next. And so I think growing up as that and being that way, it's caused me to always just be focused on the goalpost that constantly moves, like as you
Yeah.
accomplish one thing, then you are just all of a sudden got your sights set on the next thing, and all of a sudden got your sights set on the next thing. And it's just like a constant, like, you can never really be happy in any moment because it's like, well, I got to do this thing. And then you do this thing and it's like, well, I got to do this thing. And then you do
Yeah.
that thing. And then you're like, but what if I also did this? And so it's just like, it
Yeah,
never ends.
you never arrive to that, like, finish
You
line.
never arrive. Like, even if you were Adele winning an Oscar, like, you never arrive. Okay. Um, and I think like over the past couple years, I'm not saying I'm like some enlightened being, but I think I've just become more aware of, like, living more in the present, as cheesy as that sounds, like, living more in the everyday and being like, "Okay, what are things I can focus on today?" Like you said, like, going out on a walk and being like, "Oh my gosh, the sky is so beautiful, and look at those trees," and really just taking it in compared to being so, like, down the football field focused.
Mhm.
Which, don't get me wrong, that's in my nature and that's always how I will be, but it's been nice to have a something else to push back on being like, "Okay, let's, like, bring it down to what really matters. What are, like, small things in your day that do bring you joy and that joy is so accessible in very, very easy, no money involved ways."
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, a combination of that like really helps counter, the anger, the sadness, or the grief or the shame that you're experiencing, because we all will feel those things. I mean, we're all human navigating our way through this crazy earth school. And I think it's just a way to you know help you feel balance.
100%. I love that. Yeah, my AA sponsor always says, like, "Stop worrying, like, worry about Friday's shit on Friday, and
Yeah.
then you don't need to worry about Wednesday of next week. Let's worry about Friday today." I'm like,
So,
"Oh,
so true.
okay." That's a good because
Yeah.
I future trip all the time, but I appreciate your vulnerability and thank you so much for doing this. I just have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
I love the EP. I really do.
Thank you.
And I love one of your Instagram posts is you said you have like a checklist of things to do. It's like get your favorite drink and blah blah blah, and then like listen to this 10 times, and then at the end it tells you says go to your mirror and tell you you love yourself. And I'm like that's so cool. Like that's just such a good I don't know. It just kinda for me and being in recovery and you're hearing your story, it, like, sums up that album, just like, this is such a
Thank you.
positive record.
Adam, you listen to the listening checklist so well. I'm so impressed. Um, yeah, I mean, a song like Story I Tell Myself I wrote because I think a lot of us have an internal dialogue that is pretty mean and
Mhm.
pretty raw in like a dangerous way. And writing that song, I really wanted to at least become conscious myself and hopefully inspire other people to become more conscious of like, what are the words that I'm actually saying to myself? Because I do believe that those words matter. And if you're constantly telling yourself that, at least in my case, I'm not pretty enough, I can't play guitar enough, I'm too this, I'm too that, it it really wears. It really, really wears on your subconscious and honestly affects like the way you show up in the world. And so if you can start to rewrite some of those things to more loving and more believing in yourself sentences or even words, like I know it changes the way you show up in the world. And yeah, I think being able to like look in the mirror and tell yourself I love you is hard. Is like really hard. It sounds so cheesy and so stupid, but it's like a really hard thing to do. And yet a really important thing to do. I think I called the EP Love Myself because the song Love Myself is written about my eating disorder. Um and I just think that it's also not a destination that you get to, that you like walk through the gates and then you're like, okay, now I'm here, I'm just gonna love myself for the rest of my life. Like I think as we navigate through life, it's a hard thing to do, to constantly show up and want to love yourself in an open way. Um, but I think it's something that can do every day. You can like learn and relearn um and constantly work at doing that. That will therefore, I believe, affect every other relationship in your life.
Mhm. 100%. And I mean, to have an eating disorder, it's not like it's something you can remove from your life. Like, for me, it's like, I just can't drink alcohol, that's just you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, you can't just not
I'm with you.
you have to, like,
I just can't
consume
not
food.
have body image issues. Like
Yeah.
you're right. I will have those things with me for the rest of my life. Just as you said, you just can't drink for the rest of your life. It's like, okay, now that is a part of you. That is a part of you that you can like hold hands with and be like, okay, now we're going to go on this journey together. And you don't need to like shame them. If anything, you can like embrace them and be like, thank you for teaching me these things. Thank you for like letting me learn these things. And now we're going to like approach the next thing, the
Mhm.
two of us, because we're stronger
Sure.
together.
Yeah, I know 100%. Again, I thank you so much for doing this, Lindsay. You've been so awesome, and yeah, and I appreciate your vulnerability and everything else. I have one more question before I let you go. I want to know if you have, I mean, doing this for such a long time. I know the industry has changed. I mean, it changes like I feel like every other year. But what would you say if you had any advice to an aspiring artist, somebody that maybe wanted to do this?
I would say that listening to yourself is the most important thing that you can do for your entire career. Um, if you're brand new getting started, you'll be surrounded by a lot of people who will give you great advice, and you should listen to that advice, but you should listen to it after you listen to yourself. And I just remember that there were like artistic choices early on that I'd be like, okay, I really want to do this, but they say I should do this, so I'm gonna go do what they said. Um, and I just think as a young artist, like the things that make you you are what set you apart from everybody else in the world. And like those things that your heart gets excited about, whether you're writing a song or it's a melody or it's a lyric or it's adding an instrument or playing an instrument this way, like those are the things that are going to make you different and going to make you like stick out in a beautiful way in an industry where there's like so many people releasing music every single day on the face of the planet. Like there's I think 200 songs that are serviced to DSPs daily. Okay. So
Oh,
it's like,
it's probably more than that. I mean, just people uploading it in general, I'm sure it's
yeah,
probably
yeah,
insanity.
exactly. And so it's like the things that make you uniquely you are your best friends.
Bringing it backward.